It's time to address a serious misunderstanding that I've been noticing lately. When it comes to owning land, especially land with wooded areas like what you see behind me, what you might see as a destructive process is actually something that's necessary to be done to prevent negative environmental changes. And I'm going to take you down in the woods with me to show you exactly what I'm talking about. We have a few problems going on down in our woods. One of them is the grapevine here. This stuff is really nasty on the trees. It basically uses the tree as its trellis, and once it forms its own canopy of leaves in the tree, it will block out the tree's leaves from the sun and eventually kill the tree over time. We also have a bunch of dead ash trees down here due to the emerald ash borer going through our woods. And I'll show you in just a little bit what kinds of problems the ash trees could cause. But right now, the buckthorn is our main focus. And I do want to be clear that the DNR does want landowners to remove buckthorn if we know that it's present on our property. And that's because in most cases, it's an invasive species. Now, there's only a few species that we're really concerned with up here, and that includes the common buckthorn and the glossy buckthorn, which those are both invasive species, and then there is the alderleaf buckthorn. Now, if you take a closer look at the leaves on this particular buckthorn, you might be able to see that the veins of the leaf are pretty parallel to each other, and the big key indicator is they have no serrated edges. It's a smooth-edged leaf, which means this is the glossy buckthorn, and this is an invasive species. Now, if we don't do anything with this at all, over the long term, this can cause a lot of damage to the local environment and ecosystems. The DNR suggests 3 different types of removal for buckthorn, and those include mechanically, chemically, and manually. Now, we like to use the mechanical method over the chemical method just to further reduce the likelihood of any other negative environmental impacts. Plus, we have a special feature on our property that, in my opinion, takes chemical treatment completely off the table. And manually removing the buckthorn just isn't really an option for us either, because this stuff spreads fast. I mean, it's something we want to stay ahead of. We don't want to be chasing our tails, so we like to use our hydraulic equipment. All right, so I'm going to take you into the back field here now, where my dad and I did most of that buckthorn removal last fall, just to kind of show you what's going on. It's a little wet back here today. Thankfully, things are finally drying out instead of getting more rain. But you can see in front of us right now is a tree line, fence line. It's also the fence line that divides our property from the hunting club land that's just on the other side there. And it's about a half-mile long fence line. And then to the right of us here is another small wooded area that we have on our farm. And there's plenty of thick stuff inside there. Now, if you're wondering where the invasive species of buckthorn came from, as far as I know, it's native to the Eurasian countries. And it came over here with the Europeans in about the mid-1850s when they immigrated here. And I guess they just wanted to take a piece of home with them, so they brought buckthorn, of all things. I guess it's an ornamental shrub, or it can be trimmed into a hedge. But like all good things, it came to an end when it got out of control and started to spread wildly and uncontrollably. And just up ahead here is the spot where I'm taking you. I'll meet you in the woods. So right now we're down in the area where my dad and I did a lot of that cleanup process for the buckthorn and some other dead stuff that was laying around on the ground. I was in the excavator with a rake attachment, and he was in the skid loader with a grapple bucket. And between the two of us, we got a lot of stuff done in a little bit of time, which was very nice. But now that we're down here, I can finally show you the chain reaction of events that occurs if we don't stay ahead of this particular process of land management. Now, I remember earlier when I had said that the buckthorn is very damaging to the local ecosystem and environment. Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. Now, if you want to look this up, buckthorn is an allelopathic plant, and that means that it secretes toxins into the ground to kill off nearby vegetation and other trees to make sure that it survives without much competition or any competition at all. That's really a bad thing for a couple of reasons. It changes the native species of vegetation that we have around here for our native species of animals that they depend on for food and shelter and other things. So if the buckthorn wipes that all out, it could wipe out an entire ecosystem over time. Now, the other problem with that is that when it kills all of that low-growing vegetation, if you take a look around you here and you notice how clean the ground is, I mean, yeah, it's clean because we cleaned the ground, but we didn't clean it right down to the bare dirt and scratch everything out of here. Most of this was bare because the buckthorn plant killed off most of that vegetation, and that was all that was left after removing the buckthorn. Now, that lack of vegetation can also change the structure of the soil because there's nothing there to really hold things together. It makes the soil a lot more prone to erosion, and that's where the ash trees start coming into play. Now, if we just let the dead ash trees rot and fall over, I think there's 2 scenarios that are highly likely to play out, and I suppose technically there could be a third. But from what I'm about to show you here in just a few seconds, I think it's unlikely that due to the density of our wooded areas that an ash tree will just fall over and fall flat to the ground without any other problems. I think what's more likely to happen is like the scenario that's going on to the right of me here, where this tree has decided to tip out of the ground for whatever reason. I don't know if it's something to do with the root system in the ground or if it's just a poor soil structure that can't support the tree for whatever reason, but the tree has definitely tipped and fallen over into other trees. And it actually looks like, though, that these two trees right here are dead ash trees based on the bark. Now, the problem with an ash tree falling into a living tree, especially if it knocks off any sizable limbs or branches, is that it will expose that living tree to insect infestations, fungal infections, and that's if the dead ash tree laying in the living tree is not enough to stress that living tree out and eventually kill it. The second scenario that we see often down here, if you look to the left of me, you'll notice that special feature that I was talking about earlier. We have a creek that runs through our farm, and this is why we cannot chemically treat the buckthorn. But you'll notice the other scenario are these smaller blockages, and then there's a couple bigger blockages back that way further, two trees that have fallen across the path of the creek. And unfortunately, we can't do anything with those two trees. They're not on our property, but we do have several smaller blockages and some trees laying across the creek that runs through our part of the land. Now, that causes a lot of problems, especially in the springtime. If we have any excessive snowmelt or heavy rainfalls, all of these blockages really cause the creek to back up, and then the water spills into new areas of the land. And because of that now loosened soil from the buckthorn infestation, it creates a whole bunch of soil erosion that exposes tree roots and kills other trees.
At this point, you might be losing your mind thinking, AJ, you guys caused all that erosion because you took all that buckthorn out. You loosened up all the soil, and now you're just trying to justify everything you did with this land management stuff. And no, you can clearly see that erosion has been a long-term problem down here, all of the roots exposed, long before this cleanup project ever took place. And this is all footage from the cleanup project. You can see the thick canopy of leaves from the trees and the buckthorn toxins that wiped out the low ground vegetation. Yeah, it compromised the soil structure down here. And prior to this, we didn't have the equipment to get down here to see all of the damage that was taking place, the creek blockages, the soil erosion. These are the same three trees with the roots exposed that are now dead that I showed you just moments ago. And now with the equipment we have and through better conservation practices, we can slow down or stop the erosion.
An even bigger problem is when the water flows over the creek banks out into the cropland here and washes large chunks of our soil away. Now, this spot was subject to that type of situation, and we've been trying to fill this in and keep the creek cleaned out because this can infect an entirely different ecosystem like you see right here.
Summer is here and so is the algae on Lake Winnebago. The Winnebago County Health Department is warning of blue-green algae. It can make people and pets sick.
Now you might be thinking, big deal. Pets and people don't need to be in the water. Problem solved. But there's more to the story than that. Those blue-green algal blooms can be lethal to some species of fish. And what's even more devastating is the aftermath of the algal bloom. When the algae starts to decompose, it requires large amounts of oxygen to the point that it can completely deplete the water of oxygen in some areas or make the level so low that fish suffocate and die, leading to large kill-offs.
The algal blooms that you just saw in that clip are largely caused by a nutrient runoff, mostly in the form of nitrates, especially when large chunks of cropland like this get washed out. Now, before you get all crazy on farmers and cropland owners saying, you guys need to stop using so much fertilizer, well, there's a lot of other sources for nitrates besides just fertilizer. For example, the crop type that you grow, any kind of legume like alfalfa, clover, peas, they are all nitrogen-fixing plants, which means they can take the nitrogen gas from the air and convert it into nitrates with the bacteria in the roots, in the soil. And have you ever wondered why your grass seems to green up so much right in the spring of the year, right after a nice thunderstorm? That's because the lightning is actually powerful enough to split the nitrogen gas atoms in the air, which makes the nitrogen atoms combine with oxygen atoms to form nitrates in the atmosphere that then get washed down with the rain. We're far from taking down all of our woods. Even though we may have disrupted things a little bit down in our woods, everything will grow back and the native species will be just as happy as what they were before. But I can guarantee it's not nearly as destructive as what the developers do to build brand new subdivisions and apartments in what used to be farmland where wildlife used to roam free. Now, on the other side of this tree line and fence line is the hunting club land. And while we were doing our cleanup project down here, we noticed that there were some trails that were already cut out on our side of the woods, but not trails cut out by us, instead by a trespassing hunter who, for some reason, thought he had the right to hunt this lower corner of our land and shoot into the direction of other hunters in the trees behind me. Check out this next video right here to see how we use this project to stop the reckless behavior of the hunter.